Hi everyone, delonewolf here and welcome back to EVE Talk, your weekly look at the market in EVE Online. When it comes to the news and the development in EVE Online, there hasn't been that much, except of course Brisk Rubal, the CSM member that was banned for breaking the NDA, basically leaking information in order to, I think, help to other players gain an unfair advantage in the game. It turns out that there was no collusion, that the new report has come out. So yeah, CCP has to apologize. They have done so, but this does leave a bit of a bad aftertaste in your mouth. Of course, I've always been one to really trust CCP to do their due diligence before they ban someone. Here in the latest response to the situation, CCP did say that they moved super swiftly because they felt like they needed to ensure and protect the integrity of the CSM. But basically they moved too quickly on that one, which is definitely a shame. I personally am happy that I stayed out of the whole drama, and I plan to do so. This type of drama is not really what I feel like I should be covering, but it was the only news really last week. When it comes to the new Eden store, we still have the sale on the Ace of Pot Hunter skins. So that is for the Gila, the Worm and the Rattlesnake. So you can still grab those at a discount. Other than that, nothing too new to report there. The Kai Neon skins are still there. Pretty unique looking, I must say. And then we also have the Metamataria Exotica skins for the Triglavian ships that are front and center. I still hold 10,000 plex, but let's go take a look at the market. That might change soon. So we are going to start with plex and stuff, and that's going to be at 2 minutes. 200. So plex in Jita up to 4,356,000 ISK at this point. If we go to the player owned trade hubs, it's more than 4.3 million as well, and the buyers are at just below 4.3 million in the player owned trade hubs as well. So super narrow margin here. Look at the chart. A second top is basically being formed very close to the previous 1 year high. This for me is another opportunity to sell at a high point, but I will also, I think, be a little more careful when it comes to the volumes, because this is not what I was expecting. I really thought that perhaps we'd hesitate for a while around the 4 million mark, but that we would start to go down from this point. So I was wrong on that last week for sure. The real question is, do you think that we are going to go substantially higher? Will we reach a new 1 point high, 4.5 million, something that the market is willing to try for plex at this point, or will some other pressures start to actually stop this this second top here? I'm of that personal opinion, but I will also be very careful. I'm thinking I'll try to sell like 10% of my plex on this second peak that we are seeing here at the moment. But it's definitely, in my opinion, a second sell opportunity if you want the ISK rather than the plex. And at the moment, I can't see this continue for too much longer, personally. But yeah, 4.3 million, very easy sale at the moment, and in Jita a little bit above that as well. Next up, we have the multiple pilot training certificates. Those are up to 2 billion ISK for the sellers as well, and a little bit below 2 billion for the buyers. You can see here working on that 1 year high point, and that was really one of the main reasons why I thought plex would not make it to another high. It's because the multiple pilot training certificates stayed a decent amount below 2 billion, whereas plex for 30 days game time are a decent amount above 2 billion. And so I thought that, well, the multiple pilot training certificate would remain the alternative for people that want to have a skill queue training going, and as long as this stays below 2 billion, well, there's no need for plex to continue that ascent. It should really be a top. But here we go, another spurt up, also against my expectation. Multiple pilot training certificate now above 2 billion ISK on the sellers market, a 1 year high point. Very difficult to make a massive sales on these, of course, because the volumes are down the toilet as well, and that should be an indication that this cannot keep going on endlessly. At some point, nobody is gonna be willing to pay that much ISK for these items, but right now it does look like they are still climbing. For the skill extractors, we have the very same pattern as for plex, of course. getting very close to the 500 million mark once again. 493 million for the sellers. In JITA it's 503.5 million, and the buyers are at 480 million. A bit more margin in the skill extractors between the sellers and the buyers, but still very expensive, of course, very close to a second 1-year high point. After that, we have the skill injectors. Let's see if there's an impact on that. And yes, there is. The large skill injectors continuing their ascent towards 1 billion ISK. That may be the part where the market decides whether or not they want to go even higher. But large skill injectors, 1 billion, 19 million for the sellers. In JITA, it's 1 billion, 20 million. And the buyers are at 983 million ISK. Volumes here still decently strong. Probably a little bit less than average, but not by too much. Around 5,000 large scale injectors being sold being traded every day, I should say. But yeah, obviously a 1-year high point, and this would again, in my opinion, be a great time to sell if you manage to snag the 700 million ones about 6 months ago. This is a very nice trade that works on the regular wavy patterns that we tend to see in the plex related items. For the small skill injectors, after a bit of hesitation a couple of weeks ago, well, another spurred up to catch up to the rest of the movements, of course, heading for 210 million ISK on the chart. It's actually 204 million for the sellers in perimeter, but 209 million in JITA, and then 191 million for the buyers. Also 1-year high point. If you have these investments, I would again consider selling a little bit. Maybe not everything at the same time. The multiple training certificates increase to 2 billion, and then the plex increase are a bit of a surprise to me, and I can't guarantee that it's going to end anytime soon with these surprises. We finally also have the daily alpha injector that was, well, also one of those indicators to me personally that we were reaching a peak, because here we also had a bit of a downtrend after reaching almost 74 million ISK in April or just before April. But look at the tail end here again, back above 70 million ISK, 74 million again for the sellers, 69 almost for the buyers. Also working on a second peak, basically trading very close to a 1-year high point. So a bit of, to me at least, a bit of surprise resurgence in the plex stuff. Not to everyone. Some of the viewers did question my analysis on plex, and it turns out that they were right. Here is our second leg up. Let's move on to the minerals next at 8 minutes. Like that, and let's start with titanium. You may have seen it on the ticker. Might look like bad news that titanium has to give back ground, but on the other hand, look at the chart. We're staying above 4.5 ISK. It is actually a decent performance considering the current market. So here for the sellers, 4.6 ISK. Buyers are still up to 4.55. So this is basically some opportunity selling that is happening. You can see some pretty fast undercutting with, unfortunately, decent volumes. We're going from 4.7 to 4.62 with 2 billion units. That's going to take a little bit of time to absorb by the market, but once we get through that, you get back to the 475, 480 mark decently quickly, and that's where we find more billions of units, of course. So titanium, still definitely very much a lot of supply that is coming in on this market, too much for the market to absorb, but we're also seeing a little bit of slowdown in the in those volumes if you look at the velocity at which the price goes down as we get through those sell orders. So potentially we're going to be able to defend the 4.5 ISK, and hopefully we will see this volatility come back a little bit. The potential to get to 4.8, I think, looking at these sell orders, actually does exist. Next up, we have a pyrite that's also basically flat for the week here, just shy of 4 ISK, 3.77 for the first seller, but look at that, 395, 397, and then 419. But there is one seller of almost 800 million units that is still standing in between there, but you can again see that just on the front page we go from 377 to 4.61 ISK. Buyers are at 376, which is actually not bad. This is at the higher end of this chart as well. So pyrite, same pattern. There's still a little bit too much competition. The volumes, right, 800 million units trying to be sold below 4 ISK is still going to put a bit of a stop on an increase in price, but I think it might actually happen. This is interesting. Next up, we have Mexon. Let's take a look at that. A couple of legs working its way towards 65. It's not really getting there, and again, the competition does come in. But first sell order 57.65, that'll get snagged up pretty quickly. Then 61.6 ISK for the sellers, above 60, and then 57.63 for the buyers. What's surprising here, or what should be noted here, I think, is 30 million. 6 million for 50 million. We have to go up to 62.11 to find almost 300 million units. So here again, prices go up decently quickly, a little bit less so than in the previous two, but the volumes are quite a bit lower all of a sudden as well. So interesting situation. Next up, we have Noxium that unfortunately breaks through the 300 ISK barrier on the chart, so that is not good news. It's 282 for the first one. Again, a tiny little order. Someone has been dumping their little leftovers, I think. 295 ISK for most sellers, and then 282 for the buyers. And here I am seeing 11 million, 60 million, 2 million, another 38 million, and we only go up from 295 to 297. So here also, you can also see that all of these came in the last 24 hours. It's basically some decent dumping that has caused a crash in the price here, and well, we're through the 300 ISK barrier on the sellers, so it's going to be a bit of a fight if you look at how low we have to go until we find 300 ISK to get the average price back above that. So are we finally going to start moving in the 275 to 300 range? I think so. I've been predicting that for a while, but Noxium has surprised me on how well it has been able to defend the 300 ISK barrier. Of course, all the others are showing the exact opposite trend, where we actually see supplies come in more slowly, the prices go up more quickly, so we'll have to keep a close eye on that. Next up, after Noxium, we have Zydrine, and that is more bad news. We're now substantially below 500 ISK, and apparently we're going to stay there. 488 ISK for the sellers, 475 for the buyers. Last 24 hours, half a front page. This is still the regular 6 million, 3 million, 2 million, 5 million that comes in almost every single day from individual corporations, individual moons, in my opinion. At Megasite, you may already have seen that on the ticker knows that same decline. It's actually a little bit more of a straight line down from 500 ISK to the current range. 474 ISK for the sellers. So sellers of Zydrine are above sellers of Megasite, and the buyers are down to less than 450 ISK as well. 4 million, 1.5, 2 million here, another 1.5 million here, 2.6 here for 477. Yeah, lots of competition. Look at the last 24 hours, more than a full front page coming in as well. It's just too much supply in the former Nosek minerals of Megasite and Zydrine. After that, we've got more fights trying to hold on to 8,000 ISK. It's 8,144 ISK for the sellers and 7,858 for the buyers. The real bottom seems to be passed, but this is still a very, very low price. If you haven't gotten any Morphite investments, maybe waiting for a little bit of a dip in the buyers is something you could do, but just some slow buying below 7,900 ISK. If you look at this entire chart, I think it's not necessarily a bad thing to pour some ISK into, but again, at this point, be very careful when it comes to your volumes. Alright, moving on to the PI materials at 1410. This is actually where I've been trying to trade in the last week. I've not been too successful. I'm basically still trying to grab some cheap advanced PI materials and some others as well. But you can see why here are the broadcast nodes chart back below 2 million ISK after a bit of a spike to 2.10 million. Not really something you want to trade on, but that pressure is nice for people that want to buy some of these advanced PI materials in case of, well, if I want to build another structure, I can do that. If CCP does ounce structures, then I am ready with some of these to bring them to the market. Sellers of broadcast nodes less than 2 million ISK, buyers less than 1.9 million ISK. It's not a 1-year low point, but less than 1.9 million for the buyers. It is pretty cheap. This is a nice time to try and snag some on the cheap. After that, we have the construction blocks. Let's take a look at that chart. Heading back for 12,000 ISK, getting back to its average price. So that's a nice little comeback story in these non-fuel related PI materials. 12,300 almost for the sellers, 11,600 for the buyers. Is back for a normal price, maybe a touch below the historic average, but it's definitely not trading as low as what we've seen like 6 months ago. So this is a decent price for construction blocks. I think that you can make the choice. If you want to sell, sure, you're getting decent ISK out of it. If you want to gamble on an eventual better spike, I would fully understand that as well. If you do sell, do have the patience for a sell order, in my opinion. Consumer electronics, same thing, went up to 14,000 ISK. Needs to give back a little bit of those gains, but we are staying at 13,900 for the sellers. Slightly above average, or definitely around the average again, and 12,800 is actually almost a decent price for the buyers as well. So showing a bit more demand in these non-fuel rate PI materials. Here again, if you're selling, definitely I would say put up that sell order for the 1,000 ISK extra. Then we've got coolants. We saw the obvious peak here in March. The decline towards 12,500 ISK, but look at the tail end here. Last couple of days we're actually up again, and yeah, it's that's a big surprise. Let's take a look at around Jita. Then we still have some sell orders in perimeter, just one jump out that are going for 13,000 ISK, but sellers of coolants, generally speaking, are back above 15,000 ISK, and that is right here. So a second massive peak in the works for coolants all of a sudden. Very surprising, opening up a massive margin between sellers and buyers. 15,000 for the sellers, 12,000 for the buyers. That's a quarter of 25% margin if you start from the buy orders. That's kind of crazy. That is something where you could try to buy for 12k, try to sell for 14,900 ISK, and you've got an instant trade that actually makes you ISK potentially. Who will win out? That is the real question here. We are obviously seeing a bit of competition. Some people increased volumes, obviously grabbed everything that was for sale up to a certain point, but the question is, will they be able to force the buyers to higher prices? And that's the fight that's happening here. That is why we're not seeing anything on the chart, and by next week we'll have the results. If the sellers become impatient, they start dumping and bring the price back down. This will be a small little spike. If on the other hand the buyers are the ones that lose their patience and they start to bring their buy price up 13 and 14,000 ISK, then yeah, absolutely we could be in for a second massive spike. Interesting situation, definitely another one that I did not see coming. Enriched uranium next, holding on to 14,000 ISK. We can see that March peak is well up to 16k. The correction compared to coolants is a little bit less though, so no massive second spike here just yet. 14,300 to 500 for most sellers, 13,400 for the buyers. About a 1,000 ISK margin between these two, less than 10%. That's more of the normal pattern for a pretty good price, well above average. Integrity response drones next. That one is continuing to do some weird stuff and is actually remaining at an average price, 2.5 to 2.6 million for the sellers, 2.5 million for the buyers. So here we do have one advanced PI material that is on its average after a little bit of volatility. Mechanical parts next, pretty much the same pattern as coolants, except a little bit less pronounced as well. But you can see that the peak here was up to 14,000 ISK. Sellers are back at 12,400 ISK, and the buyers at 11,500. So 12,500, 400 around here. Obviously, again, above average, and you know, increasing in price after the correction of the March peak. Nuclear reactors next, continuing unfortunately to show volatility in this very narrow range of 90 to 110,000 ISK. So this is 98 to 100,000 discs for the sellers, 88,000 for the buyers. It's basically the sellers that are moving up and down a little bit, and from time to time you also have days where the buyers win out, and that's when you get these lower points on the chart. So nuclear reactors, look at the volumes as well, very erratic, very difficult to actively be trading in this one, yeah, I would say wait for the buy opportunities and then wait for a more general comeback for nuclear reactors where the volumes might be a little bit more healthy, that we have sustained increase in price, but you'll need patience if you want to trade in this item, unfortunately. Organic mortar applicators, another one that had a little bit of a spike, but definitely less than stuff like, where are the broadcast nodes? Definitely less than the broadcast nodes. And so here we did have, like around a week ago, the 5-day moving average breaking through the 1 million ISK barrier. Now, volumes increased, so people did make a move on that opportunity. We're back to 1.1 million for the sellers and a bit above 1 million for the buyers. So we're a little bit too late for that, but you obviously could have grabbed some organic mortar applicators on the very cheap about a week ago. Robotics next, also a decent comeback. Not as volatile as coolants or anything like that, but back well above average, with sell prices at 104,000 ISK almost and 99,000 for the buyers. Self-harmonizing power cores next. Here we had that slump throughout March where we went to 1.9 million on the average price. It's recovered from that a little bit, 2,050,000 ISK for the sellers, 2,040,000 ISK for one buyer, but most buyers are still below 2 million, which is a decently low price for self-harmonizing power cores. We're basically staying below average here as well. Superconductors losing a bit of volatility, but settling at a decent price, 13,100 for the sellers, 12,500 for the buyers, right around the average here. Actually doing a lot better than construction blocks, which is what I would compare it to. It's non-fuel related, so these superconductors showing some nice volatility and actually maintaining that average price quite well in the last couple of months. Test cultures next, staying well below average this one though, selling for 7,400, buyers coming in at 7,100, which is, well, not the very bottom that we saw in April, but it's still pretty damn cheap. And then finally we have the wetware mainframes that is playing with 1-year lows again, heading for that 2.1 million ISK in the last couple of days, 2.1 for the sellers, 2.061 for the buyers, so super narrow margin, but obviously trading well below its average, actually close to 1-year low points. So advanced PI materials, you know, you can hunt for some bargains there. Next up we have the advanced moon materials coming in at 22.45. All right. Here, well, I haven't really heard too much about volatility, so I think that the trend will continue where we have below average prices and bottom prices. For me personally, yeah, I have some investments in this already, and I'm very slowly, if I really see some super low points, buying in very small volumes just to have a little bit more to trade with. But it's very difficult to say how long this is going to remain the situation. So here we have crystalline carbonite, less than 150 ISK on the chart, 147 for the buyers, very close to 1-year low point. And actually, compared to the previous times where we had buy opportunities, they shot up very quickly back to 175. Here we are staying at these low points for a little bit longer, which might mean that you should be a bit more worried. At least that's my view on that, and which is why I'm buying more slowly here. Super pronounced, very easy to spot. Well, all of a sudden charts at a 1-year low. Let's try to snag some of these carbonites for less than 150. You get a good deal. Here now it's very difficult to say when you'll be able to take a profit. Ferrite carbide, try to recover to 150, but you can see again 1-year low points at play. 140 ISK for the sellers, 128 for the buyers. Super cheap here as well. After that we have the titanium carbide market. That's not at a 1-year low point, but obviously also under pressure at the moment, trading pretty cheaply with, goddammit, don't crash. Well, I'm still seeing a local come in. So we caught up. Oof. All right, 180 almost for the sellers and 172 for the buyers. Not as pronounced an opportunity as the Fernite or the crystalline carbonite, but obviously that pressure still exists. We are oversupplied, it's a little bit too stable. Tungsten carbide, the one that actually did really well to hold on to 200 to 225 as its sell range for quite a while, doesn't maintain that anymore. We are back to a less than average price, 193 for the sellers, 182 for the buyers. Look at the last 24 hours, more than half a front page. All of this coming in with 22 million units, 13 million units. Yeah, that's in my opinion, you get that very similar pattern to what we're seeing with Megasite and Zydrine. You get the smaller volumes, 1, 3, 5 million. Probably from high-sec mines potentially after you refine it, I think. But then you've got these bigger ones. It's probably some selling from null-sec entities. I'm not entirely sure on that, but that's my read on the situation. After that, we have the metamaterials. Here is the photonic metamaterial, also flat at a 1-year low point here, selling for 16,000 disk. Buyers are below 16,000 disk. Go look for that on the chart, and we are obviously below everything. Next up, we have plasmonic metamaterials. All right, first counter move, heading back towards more than 22,500 disk. Not bad. 23,400 for the sellers, 22,000 for the buyers. Well, here, I mean, considering that the bottom is less than 18,000 disk, I would say you have a small sell opportunity. And if you want to have some actual movement in your advanced PI material investments and actually want to do some trading, this is the time to try and sell some of your plasmonic metamaterials. A sell opportunity. Awesome. Non-linear metamaterials continuing that slow decline, not yet reaching buy opportunity territory, but definitely under pressure as well. 24,000 for the sellers, 24,000 for the buyers. And then we have the terahertz metamaterials. We are at the tail end. We again have pressure. 20k is the bottom. We're still a way away from that. 20,500 for the buyers and 24,000 for the sellers. But the pressure is obvious. Generally speaking, that is unfortunately the situation. Null-sec and high-sec, no super big wars. Moon mining is continuing without any problems at this point. For the other materials, we've got fermionic condensates that had a nice recovery back to a price above 100,000 disk. Doesn't last long though, 95,000 for the sellers and for the buyers. So here, bit of pressure on that price again, but still a reasonable range though. Ferrogel staying flat below average if you look at this 1-year chart, so there's really not much to say here except a super narrow margin again. Fullerite's another 1-year low point. I think I'm trying to snag some of these on the very cheap, just above 900 disk for the sellers, but below 870 for the buyers. That is definitely very, very cheap. Hypersynaptic fibers, again, flat at that super low range. Nanotransmitters, flat at a below average range. Phenolic composites, same thing, unfortunately, after recovering a little bit from a 1-year low point here. Let's see if I bought any of that. Phenolic composites, yep, I bought some for 1900 disk. Now they are selling for, let's take a look at that, 1980. Buyers are a little bit above 1900. So this is one of those that I actually will have grabbed at this point, I think. Unless I can see my order at 1900. No, I think I did grab that for that exact price. Which, well, it was too early, but at least I do have my investment ready for that one. And then we have ceramic fibers. That's also continuing that decline. How close to 400 are we? That's 407 for the sellers, 418 for the buyers. Obvious pressure again, and if you want that advanced moon materials investment, also one that you can consider looking into. Again, don't go crazy with the volumes though. All right, let's move on to the Tech 2 ships at 29.20 and take a look at these for the Aries, which well, jump up to 30 million ISK. All right, not bad. Sellers are at 30 million ISK, buyers are up to 28 million all of a sudden, so this should have decent volumes. Yeah, 100 to 200 a day, not so bad. Bit of a jump up to, well, it's the average price for the year here. 30 million ISK for a frigate. Is that average? I keep looking for 25 as the bottoms where I'd like to snag some. Basilisk next, also under pressure, staying at 230 million ISK, so the buyers are at 206, which is quite low, but we've seen it go lower, and then 228 for the sellers. It's a decent margin between sellers and buyers, so it's very difficult, I think, considering where the chart is at, to grab some of these buy orders. Next up, we've got the Cerberus, after getting very close to a 1-year low point and definitely a 6-month low point, goes back up to 250 again, 257 for the sellers, 229 for the buyers. So here we should see increased volumes. Yep, exactly. I think I told you guys we saw this nice decline in the price. We weren't gonna reach 200 million quite, but this was definitely below most of the chart and a nice little buy opportunity for the Cerberus. And looks like not necessarily viewers, but the market spotted that, because all of a sudden we were trading 2 to 3 times more than normal for the Cerberus, and we drove the price back to, well, still a decently low price, but it's not that bottom anymore. So the market does make moves on these opportunities. The Crow is staying above 30 million ISK, which I think is not too interesting. 31 for the sellers, 27.7 for the buyers. So here I would again wait for an obvious dip down towards that 25 million range. And then we get the Guardian that is continuing to be under pressure as well. 230 on average. No, is that right then? Yeah, it says 230 on average on the chart, but it's 225 for the sellers and 217 for the buyers. So also trading a touch below average. Heretic made a comeback to 80 million ISK on average, is now staying in the 70 to 80 million range. 75 million for the sellers, 67 million for the buyers. A bit of incoming with 26 at the tail end here might put a bit of pressure on that price again as well, but the good times where you could try to grab Heretics for 60 million, not easy to do so, but you could try, those are over. Next up we've got the Hound continuing the decline, and oops, Hound, not Ishtar, whoops. The Hound trading at less than 30 million ISK, but again here what I like is some momentum on the decline. Touched at 25 million. That is where, is it a completed trade? Nope. Is it here trying to sell then? Yep, that is where you can grab them for 25 million, and I'm still trying to sell them for 37 million. I tried to make this trade happen, basically a purchase around here and then a sell around here. It hasn't triggered just yet, so now I need to be patient. I would say always put up your sell orders for 3 months. You gotta pay that price anyways when it comes to the taxes, so I'm continuing to give that a chance. But yeah, that's what I personally look out for. It's 25 million on the frigates, and then of course a nice sell opportunity. So I missed the sell opportunity, but I still have those Hounds for 25 million. Currently they're selling for 28, buyers are at 26 million. So getting there, but a bit more momentum down would have helped. After that we'd get the Ishtar, and this is continued decline of a price to an obvious 1-year low point. Volumes are down quite a bit as well, less than 230 on the chart. It's 217 for the sellers and 202 for the buyers. I do think we'll see a move on that by a bigger entity pretty soon, so if you want that Ishtar investment, try to be a bit more aggressive in your buy order. Perhaps stay below 205, but try to definitely grab it, because considering this chart and the Ishtar, which is actually flown in fleets as well in nullsec, I do think we'll see an opportunity there for a bigger group to make a pretty big purchase. So I would say if you want that Tech 2 gamble, Ishtar is it this week. Definitely try to grab 1 or 2. Then we've got the Manticore that is settling back at 30 million, which is pretty low for the Manticore. It's 30 for the sellers and 29 for the buyers. But we'd love to see a bit of a better dip like here before we try to grab those. The Munin Yeah, playing with those 1-year lows. If we can get it below 230, it's 229 for the sellers, 207 for the buyers. This remains very cheap. What I don't like about it is that the volumes are super erratic and pretty low, generally speaking. But yeah, also just like with the Ishtar, you can try to grab Munins for less than 210 million ISK, which is, well, 210. Let's see if we can get that to show below the entire chart. That is a pretty nice opportunity, potentially a very nice investment as well, if we can go back up to like the 300 million range. Nemesis next, unfortunately staying between the 25 and the 30 million mark. 27 for the sellers, 26 almost for the buyers. A bit too early. Again, give that a bit more momentum, and then we get a nice opportunity. Olneros actually working its way up very slowly towards 230 million, 224, 219 for the sellers, and 197 still for the buyers. The big problems, again, it's something that I do look at before I pull the trigger on a buy order. It's the volumes, and for the Olneros, they're not that great. Then we have the Purifier. Volatility, a jump up, really? Are we 38 million for the sellers and 32 million for the buyers? And so here I do like this better, 26, 27 before you actually grab it. But the Purifier and the Manticore do tend to trade in a higher range than the other stealth bombers, and so here once you go below 30 million, that's when you get a look for that opportunity like a hawk. Did I try any of those? Let's take a quick look. Purifier here, no. Am I trying to sell any? Nope. Any completed trades? Nope. So I never really dared to pull the trigger. But you could have grabbed them for less than 30 million is for sure, and now selling for 38 is not bad, of course. Surprise volatility in the Purifier, the surprise sell opportunity as well so far in the Tech 2 market. Saber is continuing to trade well below average, is slowly climbing up. 68 million for the sellers, 64 million for the buyers. Then we get the Scimitar, same thing, holding between an average price and a bottom price. And then finally the Stiletto. Okay, heading down as well. Normal trade range, you can see that as well, 30 plus. Now going down close to a 1-year low point. Let's see where the buyers are at. 26.4. You can see that we have a lack of buyers. Potentially could be interesting as well if you can grab a Stiletto for less than 27 million. I don't think that's a bad thing. Volumes are actually decent on this one, around 250. So I would consider it. I would try to grab one for less than 27 million. You may see an order of 4 of them pop up here. That would be what 100 million. Easy little trade. If I can make 10-20% profit on that, very nice to do. Definitely one to consider, I think. So yeah, the Tech 2 market, just like with the advanced move materials, generally under pressure. You have those individual exceptions, like this time the Purifier jumping up all of a sudden. Stealth bombers tend to be a bit more volatile, I think because of bomber fleet. I'm not entirely sure. Next up we have the Tech 3 ships coming in at 38 minutes. And let's look at the destroyers, of course. Here is the Confessor landing and getting just a little bit below 40 million ISK at the tail end. It's 41 million for the sellers, 38 million for the buyers. Here's where volumes become a bit more important. 12, 45, 29, another 17 here. Nothing crazy. Last 24 hours, half the page. That's okay, I think, for a healthy market. Decently okay volumes, maybe a touch above what I would expect. The Hecate dropped off a bit more sharply, but also stayed above 40 million ISK. So here we have 43 million for the sellers, 38 million for the buyers. And you can see that in the last 24 hours, well, this is a disguised bigger order of probably 30 to 40 ships here coming in right there. From 45 to 43.5 million. Yep, that's obviously the same pattern here. Ooh, how do you do that? All of them on the exact same second. That's not a good sign, whoever this is. Sorry, but this is something that I would say a CCP GM or something like that should look into what's happening there. How do you put this order up that quickly within a second? I don't think that's feasible. But if we look at this from the volumes perspective, you could basically say another 40 here, which brings it in line with the confessor. And then after that, we also have another 19, 14. Yeah, this is normal actually in volumes for a price above 40 million ISK. Then we've got the Jackdaw that is also landing at 40 million ISK, and so we get 40 million for the sellers, 37 for the buyers. Actually a bit more pressure on that as well, and we get 25, 42, 29, 45. Maybe a touch more than expected, but as long as we're not seeing hundreds of them come in on a single sell order all of a sudden, and we don't see 2-3 front pages of new sell orders come in the last 24 hours, this is nothing crazy. This is back on the average 40 million range with decent volumes. And then we finally have the Zwepel that's actually slowly climbing back to 40 million ISK. We just can see that we still have some volumes, but not that much anymore on the market, and the buyers are at 36 million. And this to me is a sign of a healthy tactical destroyer market. What is my read on this? Well, you see that the Confessor, for instance, had a nice jump up to 42 million, the Hecate went up to 47 million, and the Jackdaw also went up to almost 50 million. What should be a healthy market response? Well, we're going to try to build some more of these, and so they brought the price back down to 40 million ISK. Who is the one that actually gains from this? It's the Zwepel, the least popular one that was constantly trading well below 40 million ISK. Well, nobody's producing more of these anymore. So these volumes are slowly drying up, and we just created an opportunity to sell these now at 40 million ISK at a more reasonable price compared to the other tactical destroyers. And so in the last 24 hours we are starting to see some of these come back to the market now that they can finally sell them in a price range that's comparable to the other destroyers. It's never gonna win out, you're always gonna get the most popular one that'll probably be able to sell at a premium, but this is what you would expect in a healthy market, that interplay, that shift of supply, which gives opportunities to other items and things like that. So in my opinion, very good to see. No reason to panic. I would say I'm not seeing any signs of oversupply. In fact, this looks like a good market with potentially good margins here and there, great margins here and there for the producers as well. So awesome to see. Next up we have the cruisers. Here is the Legion, went up and is trying to stay above 180 million on average. It's 180 for the sellers and 170 for the buyers. Here again it's a little bit less, but it's decent availability. Last 24 hours a bit more than I expected, which is probably what stalled the increase in price here. So nothing too crazy. On the Loki, which is staying well below average at the moment and well below 200 million, we've got 182 for the sellers, 171 for the buyers. Here what I don't really like is more than a full front page again in the last 24 hours. The volumes are a bit more decent, but this comes as a surprise. Although if we again look at the average prices, 180, the Loki coming back in line as well with 182. This is not too crazy just yet. Then we should see the Proteus, which is well below 180, maybe start to see the volumes drop off here. Unfortunately, that's not the case. Last 24 hours, we still have a decent amount, almost a full front page with 27, 25 and 14 here, selling at 163 million ISK. So this apparently needs a bit more time. In the Tengu, we get the same thing going back down. So last 24 hours, not that much, but 55, 25, 25 is quite a lot for 3 sell orders. So my cruiser read here, we have some general pressure on the prices. Only the Legion is managing to hold on, but then that one sees a full front page coming in as well, which most of them do. It's a bit more in the last 24 hours here all of a sudden than what I think the Legion market can absorb. So if it stops now, then it could still be okay, but otherwise start maybe looking at this as a buy opportunity. The Tengu now all of a sudden trading for less than 165, buyers are below 160. That's actually pretty damn cheap for a Tengu, and you can see that sometimes this can spike up. The Proteus, I'd be very careful on that, because Tengu trading 100 a day, Proteus only 50 a day. and it is by far the least popular. But then you've got the Loki, of course, which has generally traded well above 200 million for most of the year, and you can now grab one for around 170 million ISK. That is actually really cheap, and so the volumes also are keeping those prices well in check. I'm surprised by the amount of Lokis, for instance, in the last 24 hours, despite this decently low price, even below or very close to the Legion. So Loki, maybe you should grab a couple. I don't think that's necessarily a bad idea. And then the Tengu looks decently interesting as well. So alright, Tech 3 market, the cruiser market. Interesting to see all of those ships come in all of a sudden in the last 24 hours, despite the fact that we've seen some pressure on all of or most of these prices for quite a bit of time, around a month or so. So very interesting. And then we are moving on to the extra product this week, and it's going to be freighters. Someone has been asking me to take a look at the freighters in the last couple of weeks, so we're going to honor that request at 45.15. There is not much to say though. In JITA you can't, oh well, can you actually trade for, let's see here, for the Tech 2s. So we've got, where are they? Industrial ships? Transport ships? Nope, that's not there. It's gonna be capital ships, I think. Capital ships, freighters, there we go. So I'll just start with the one out. Here is the bowhead, the weird one, which is not comparable to the other freighters. We can see that this one is now selling for almost 1.1 billion ISK and 1 billion ISK for the buyer. So super narrow margin, trading a little bit below average. If I'm not mistaken, this is Tech 1 stuff. Industry. Yep, yeah, so this is gonna be industry, it's gonna be minerals. So obviously it is trading below average right now. We also saw a bottom at 900 million ISK a little bit here in mid-February, another bottom here in November. So the bowhead trading below average, around a billion ISK, which is of course due to the cheap minerals at the moment. That's probably gonna be the same thing for the Providence. Yeah, this is Tech 1, so same thing here. You can see that decline from 1.25 billion a year ago to now less than 900 million for the sellers, 810 million for the buyers. That is super cheap. Then we've got the Charon. Same thing, 1.2 billion at the start, currently selling for 950 million, buyers at 900 million. Bit less of a decline, but definitely a decline as well. Obelisk, very same pattern, 1.1 to 1.2 billion, now 900 million, and you get yourself an Obelisk, 846 for the buyers. And then the Fenrir, maybe even the cheapest one, again 1.2 billion on average a year ago, now less than 900 million for the sellers, 825 for the buyers. And then I guess we should look at the jump freighters. Where the hell are those then? Can I find variations? Yeah, here is the Nomad. Can I look at that category or something? Let's see, view market details. Jump freighters. So we get capital ships and then jump freighters. Let's take a look at that. Now these are Tech 2, so that could be a different story. Here is the ARC chart. It's definitely down as well. 10 to 11 billion ISK about a year ago, and now going for around 9 billion ISK for the sellers, 8 billion ISK for the buyers. Let's think about that for a little bit here. 8 billion ISK. I quickly want to compare that to a month. So we get plex by this 500. 2 billion 2.2 billion for a month game time, and you now have a jump freighter, an ARC for, I am correct with 9 billion, man, it's so many little zeros and commas that we're seeing here, but yeah, it looks like it's 9 billion. So for 4 months game time price for a jump freighter, which potentially is like really powerful, trading pretty low. That's not bad. I'm starting to think, should I invest in one of those and maybe try to get a trade route going between Dital and then Nosek Providence using a jump freighter. That could be cool. Never done anything like that. Always felt like this was too expensive for me to actually risk. But yeah, an ARC for 9 billion. Let's take a look at the RIA next. Starts out at 10 billion and is now below 9 billion. It's 8.7 for the sellers, 8.3 for the buyers. That's a quite decent again. Then we've got the Galente and Char starts even below 10 billion. Most of the time it's just above that, and it's now 8 billion for the sellers. That's less than 4 months game time, and then it's just a little bit below 8 billion as well for the buyers. And then we've got the Nomad, which I think looks pretty damn cool, but its minimum ADR starts at 10 billion. Bit of volatility here, and is now actually down at a 1-year low point as well, with 8.9 almost for the sellers, 8.3 billion for the buyers. The ARC, I think, is basically the most beautiful one, in my opinion, and you're still paying 9 billion for that one. Yeah, obviously these are under pressure as well, and you're grabbing jump freighters for less than 10 billion ISK by quite a little bit. Interesting, almost feels like it's something I could consider at this point in my ETH career. Which one is the best one? Let me know in the comments if you're still around. Would love to know that. If you had to buy a jump freighter today, which one would it be and why? But the general freighter vibe, obviously, the Tech 1's super low because of the minerals, and then the Tech 2's actually super low as well, probably on very stable production cycles that have now found their footing and are going full bore in nullsec at this point. Very interesting suggestion actually, now that I look at it and that I took a look at the jump freighters as well. Thank you very much for that. So that's it for this week, guys. Thank you very much for watching, and as always, I'll see you next time.